will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
It's an exciting time to be involved in Bitcoin Cash at the moment.
During that whole war, Lightning versus big blocks, like, were we the bad guys? Were we the ones that weren't listening?
Fundamentally, we believe in markets, transparency, and tokenization.
Come on, you gotta come stronger than that, you know, like...
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast. Following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency. This is episode number 71, BTC Ordinals and Social Schism, featuring Schism, yeah. Featuring EmergentReasons, Dinopawnz, imaginary username. Today is Saturday, the 11th of February, 2023. I'm your host, Jeremy. Jett is doing the producing. I know I promised that MP Bryson would be on the show, but he told me he was busy with legislation or something this week, so we'll see about in a future episode getting him on to talk about what's been going on in St. Martin's. But anyway, instead we've got the whole group together to chat about BTC Ordinals, which is probably the biggest thing going on in crypto at the moment and has a lot of different aspects, both for them and also separately for BCH. So we will touch on that at the end of our discussion as well too. So yeah, we've got to introduce all our guests though. EmergentReasons, the general, back on the show. You've been on a couple of times. Give the viewers a quick rundown of who you are and what you do in the BCH ecosystem.
Yeah, my name is John, also EmergentReasons. I run the company General Protocols, and we're just doing everything we can to make Bitcoin Cash and permissionless money available to the whole world through applications, protocols, infrastructure, whatever it is we need to build. We're trying to kickstart a whole economy.
Imaginary username, you're next up. This is also I think this is your second or third time on the show.
Second,
maybe,
I think I got on your show like really early, but yeah, it's been a while.
Welcome back. Introduce yourself.
But yeah, this is imaginary username. I am uname, and I keep a bunch of things running at Bitcoin Cash node, and also do maths for general protocols for a living. So yeah.
All right. I guess that's a pretty, short and to the point. I do maths, that could encompass a lot of things. That's like some intentionally vague, spy lingo type of talk.
The math is pretty terrible in a number of ways, but yeah, let's not talk about that.
If you're getting paid for it, can't be that bad. And our last guest is Dinopawnz. This would be your first time on the show. Welcome to the show. And
yeah, thanks for having me. Absolutely. First time here. Like you said, I'm Dinopawnz. I'm a NFT enthusiast, a crypto investor, and a YouTuber making some BCH related content whenever I can. And yeah, that's me.
All right, cool. Well, we want to get onto the debate and discussion as quickly as possible, but we've got to just blast through the first couple of slides as always. So the Bitcoin Cash price today is $134 and I forgot to update this slide. $124.31 Bitcoin Cash USD. One BTC is 175.2 BCH, so down just a little bit, and one Ethereum is 12.2 BCH, so BCH also slightly down on the ratio versus Ethereum. Does anybody want to give a quick hot take on the markets? Maybe Dinopawnz, you're the biggest trader of the three, I believe. What do you think? Are we on the up and up? Are we at the bottom of the cycle, or how are we looking?
Right. So, I mean, my opinion is simply that this is a year where we're going to start seeing a bullish trend. And this is I'm just taking this information from historical past past trends in the market. Leading up to the halving, we always see a little bit of an upturn. So I think this year we started off strong January. As soon as we hit January, the market started doing a little bit better. Right now we're in a little bit of a retracement, but I still think that the overall trend is going to start heading bullish. And throughout this year, we should start seeing it the price do better. And most likely, of course, that no one here has a crystal ball, but that's just my opinion of what's going to happen. And then 2024, I think we should see an explosive year.
Yeah, for sure. I was looking at the halving. The halving is in, I think it's 430 something days, approximately. So it's not quite down to a year, but it's certainly rapidly ticking through that latter half of the cycle, and it's certainly the best part of the cycle that everybody enjoys the most is that huge euphoric rush that we all get as it turns into the halving. So I'm really looking forward to that. We haven't had that on the show started at the tail end of that period from the last cycle, and mostly just with BTC being a complete scam and laser eyes and all that. So I'm looking forward to another round of this, definitely. That's gonna be legendary. Okay, and the Swagme.cash giveaway update. Nobody sent in a story, or at least it didn't even hit my spam folder. I did check it carefully, so I guess nobody has any cool Bitcoin stories out of people that only listen to a Bitcoin podcast. But Two Dick Pete has thus become the winner by commenting first in Twitch chat this week, and is a very loyal listener to the show. So I have just granted them the Swagme.cash t-shirt. So congratulations to Two Dick Pete for winning a t-shirt. All right, let's get into it. The big revelation in the crypto markets, the crypto scene, it kind of started at the end of January, but it's been trending into February, is this thing called ordinals and inscriptions, which, to summarize, although it's not quite accurate, is basically NFTs on Bitcoin BTC. So this guy, Casey Rodarmer, and I don't know, some other people that are working with him, I assume, discovered what I'm called here an exploit in quotation marks. It's not exactly right. Maybe imaginary username can actually maybe walk us through the technical details, hopefully. But basically, people can discover a way that using the SegWit and Taproot upgrades, they could upload files, generic files, so audio, images, video, up to 4 megabytes in size, which is pretty non-trivial. You can do quite a bit in 4 megabytes into the output of one single transaction on BTC using these certain kind of scripts. And furthermore, because of the way SegWit works, you even get a discount on the fee rate that you pay for that data that you've sent up. So not only can you send it up in one output, which is very fee efficient, but you can also get a discount for all this data that you're uploading. So this then started essentially BTC NFTs, which are called ordinals, because the idea is that they're counting Satoshis and then tagging them as NFTs, and you can have all the classic crypto punks. Somebody has made a Bitcoin punks version, and you can have monkey JPEGs and videos, and somebody's even uploaded a working version of the game Doom into the BTC blockchain. Now this has created obviously a huge amount of controversy, because the Bitcoin BTC community are famously the ones who are very glad not to have NFTs. They thought, oh, we're above all that, we're hard sound money, we're not like these Ethereum Ponzi coiners type of vibe, or at least some of them did. But this sudden turn of events has really shaken things up, because it was discovered on the live network. So it's not that this is a proposed change that somebody has to make a big effort to push through and get through the political process and convince everyone. No, it's already live and it's already happening. And so that has suddenly shifted the dynamics of the BTC chain significantly. So just from this starting point, I don't know, Imaginary, do you know the technical details? Can you give a better technical summary? Or if not, anyway, what was your first impression of this sudden shift in dynamics for BTC?
First of all, as far as I can tell with my limited reading, I didn't dig too very deep into this. They didn't actually use op return. They actually use op return, which is usually the preferred way to put things on the chain. On any
No,
chain,
it's in the script.
yeah, it's in the script, which is hilarious. Which
Yeah.
which I would say probably excludes any possibility that this is intentional. Any claims that this is intentional on the developer's part is a cope. So yeah, that's from a technical side. So because it's in the script, it will be pretty difficult to prune. Well, I mean, people
So the part of it that's most interesting is the hack aspect of it is that the stuff that they did is not special. It's just that I don't know exactly what it is, but something about Taproot made it such that it bypassed the limit, because there are limits on how big a transaction is allowed to be normally. But somehow the Taproot, something about Taproot allowed them to bypass that. I don't know what it is exactly, but yeah, that was the hack part. That using Taproot allowed them to put this huge amount of data into the script.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it was actually done or people just demonstrated that it can be done. But I think at some point people crafted a transaction that has an entire clone of Doom onto it. In the BTC transaction. It's pretty hilarious.
But that wasn't the biggest one, right? So they did. There's kind of several aspects to it where it gets very finicky. And to be honest, I'm sure I'm not even the world's best person to explain this, but the idea is on BTC, there's still the 1 megabyte block size limit in terms of the actual amount of data that can go into it. But then there's this sort of separate accounting trick of block weight, which Segwit added, and you can have 4 million weight units of that, which should be equivalent to 1 megabyte by this kind of nonsensical accounting. That means that in effect, you can have essentially up to a 4 megabyte block on the BTC blockchain. And there's been a lot of back and forth about whether or not this was always possible or what. But the key point is that people haven't been using up all of that space, because without the ability to throw in huge video files or JPEGs or whatever, then even if you did just do financial transactions because of the 1 megabyte limit, you can still only squeeze out about whatever it was, like 1.7 or maybe 2.1 or something in that. It like would have roughly maybe doubled the capacity for financial transactions as a result of Segwit. But then now that this exploit has been found, suddenly people are uploading 4 megabyte blocks, or 3.5 or 3.2 or whatever. So that has significantly expanded the data, what do you call it, the storage requirements for the BTC chain, at the same time as not actually increasing the amount of financial throughput that is going through in terms of people transferring around Bitcoins as money. And that's created this whole array of like opinions and cope and stuff in various ways, because a lot of people have started backtracking and saying, no, when we did the upgrade in 2017, the upgrade in quotation marks to Segwit, everybody accepted that 4 megabyte blocks were going to be the norm and that was going to be fine. Of course, that's completely false. That was not really agreed upon at that time. And it was, it's a rewriting of the narrative. And this gets into all the, deep detail, which we're going to go into on this show, of the BTC and the BCH split and all of that, because the changing opinions is sort of a cope in the face of an unexpected exploit, basically. If this had never happened, none of these narratives would have ever come up, but now that they have, they are. Dinopawnz, what was your initial thought on these BTC NFTs?
So I think the situation is actually a little funny, obviously, because of this whole narrative in the Bitcoin space changing up. I think the addition of ordinals makes Bitcoin a little bit different, makes it a little more interesting. As an NFT enthusiast, obviously, I think it's cool to have ordinals in the Bitcoin space. It's just that of course it's going to be causing all this controversy, because obviously, you know, the block size, it wasn't meant to be filled up by a whole bunch of neon cats and JPEGs and everything. And this is obviously causing a little bit of havoc in the Bitcoin discussions and such. But yeah, to me, I think it definitely it has a place. I don't know. It really depends on what you believe Bitcoin is, right? Because it doesn't follow the white paper anymore. So if you ask two different people, like, should these ordinals even be on taking up space in Bitcoin? Well, you have two different sides. If you think that this is a store of value, Bitcoin is simply meant to be a store of value, then okay, you know what? Why not just fill it up with JPEGs? You know, at this point, it's still doing its job. You're still keeping your value in Bitcoin. Like if I have $10,000 in Bitcoin, it still has $10,000. Whatever, you fill up the space with a bunch of JPEGs. But if you believe in the white paper that was meant for Bitcoin, and that it is a transactional, you know, is meant to be peer-to-peer cash, well, now your fees are going up because of all these ordinals that people are taking up space with. And so now you might have an actual problem here. Now you're thinking, okay, look, maybe we should go back and somehow remove this, maybe censor this. I don't know. But for me, I think Bitcoin is simply a store of value nowadays. And you know what? If people have figured out how to you know, put JPEGs onto and take up space in the Bitcoin ecosystem, why not? You know, it allows for more versatility in Bitcoin and new fun aspects of it for users and stuff.
Yeah,
One
so
more
I
thing
think
to
this.
collect.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, well, that's
Collectibles,
right.
yeah.
It's become this strange scenario, right, where the Bitcoin BTC side, you know, as we've said before on this show, perhaps in the split, you know, BTC got the brand name and BCH got the idea, right? That's basically how it went down. So Bitcoin Cash has been peer-to-peer cash, blah blah blah. Everyone always talks about the white paper. Always go back to we're still doing the same. The mission has not changed, right? But BTC, when they had the split, they got the brand name, but they changed all this digital gold, store of value, like that whole narrative came in, and then everything had to be rewritten around that, with kind of a side of, well, it's digital gold, but you can maybe also use it for transactions because of Lightning Network and this, that, and the other. And now this sudden appearance of ordinals has meant that once again the narrative is now out the window, and it has to be rewritten, right? Either they have to say, well, no, we need to get back to this store of value thing, in which case we've got to do something about these ordinals, or alternatively, well, now suddenly we're kind of a bit like a shitty Ethereum or a shitty Bitcoin SV, ironically, where people are uploading and storing data onto the chain as a kind of decentralized, like, Dropbox kind of thing, and maybe people will pay more to store their, you know, troll picture. Maybe they're willing to pay $5 one time to store a troll image on BTC forever. And now all these BTC people who'd been running nodes and were so proud of the plebs need to run the nodes and it should be runnable on my home computer without storage costs increasing. That was the whole story of the block size war. Now suddenly they're in the position, oh, well, now I'm storing all these monkey JPEGs and even, you know, illegal child porn and like other stuff, which has already been in the Bitcoin blockchain, right? It's not new that people are putting info into the blockchain, but what is new is that this is being done, taking up space that otherwise could not have been used for financial transactions. And on top of that, it's being done more efficiently. So more people are flooding in to do it. And it's, yeah, going to potentially price out people who actually want to use it as cash.
It's even worse than that, because for the ones who because the fallback, right, has become, oh no, it's everything. It does everything, including financial transactions and small things through Lightning, right? And it's so much worse because the people who actually know how Lightning works and know what's necessary for it to even pretend to work, because it's just barely scraping by on pretending to work, even for people who are running things non-custodially. But you can't even pretend that it's going to work once the blocks fill up, right? Because you can't be sure that you're going to be able to publish your transaction and close a channel or open a channel in a timely way, or punish somebody if somebody tries to steal your money in a channel and so forth. And yeah, so the ones who are aware roughly of how lightning works, they're starting to raise the alarm and the yellow flags, right? Like, wait, no, wait. Lightning isn't going to work either once this starts to fill up, right? So yeah, the fallback even starts to, well, it never was a fallback in the first place, but the the narrative fallback isn't going to work anymore either.
So I want to comment on one interesting dynamics I observed through all this fiasco, and that is about the value of block space. How much does it cost to upload something and store it practically forever on a blockchain, and how does it affect how the block space is used? So it's kind of interesting. So putting JPEGs on blockchain, it doesn't it doesn't matter whether you like NFTs or not. I think most people can agree that putting entire freaking JPEGs, some of them really large, some several megabytes of JPEGs onto a blockchain is a pretty inefficient use of that space compared to some other ways to do it. Like putting a commitment on the space, which makes your JPEG still immutable, but storing the actual JPEG somewhere else. So putting that on the blockchain is really inefficient. But if your blockchain is literal, and the thing is that while it is really inefficient, there is no real way anyone can stop such a thing on any blockchain, as long as your blockchain has some sort of it has any possibility of storing random data on it. So then it comes down to basically, first, how easy it is to do it, and second, how much it costs to do it, right? So what I observe is that there's something interesting going on here, which is that, okay, first of all, if your blockchain costs literally 0.00 to put anything on it, or anything that's practically close to it, then well, it costs nothing, and people will probably just write bots as soon as your chain gets enough fame or notoriety or anything, and then start putting all sorts of junk onto it, and until the heat death of your chain, just the chain, not the universe. So there's that, and then when the cost raised by a little bit, presumably most of them would go away because it doesn't cost literally nothing anymore, and there are more efficient ways to do it. So people who still want to do it will probably try to find efficiency gains, and that's where most of the chains are. And then you got the other end of the spectrum, which is BTC, where the cost gets irrationally high by arbitrary restrictions, and in their mind, totally rational restrictions. And it got there, and to justify it, you spread the gospel that, oh, my block space is really, really valuable. It is duplicated across thousands upon thousands of nodes, and those nodes all actually do something, and that is why my block space is really valuable, and hence we need to guard it like some really treasured thing. Well, if you spread that narrative, a very weird dynamic emerges where suddenly using that for JPEGs, which is NFT JPEG, which is itself a strange thing, doesn't seem like such a bad idea anymore, even if you charge like tens or hundreds of dollars for it a piece. And it might even outcompete all your financial data. And the reason for that is that NFTs are even more than your normal cryptocurrency transactions, a hyper speculative thing, and it's one of those things I don't remember. Like, does anyone remember? It's like there is this phenomenon where for some classes of assets, the the more expensive it is, the more people perceive it to be valuable, and then the more expensive it gets. Like
like luxury handbags or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a luxury good, and it benefits from costing more. So you end up in this situation where, oh no, JPEGs are occupying BTC, and people are panicking over it, and presumably they panic over it because the block space is available, and then the NFT actually benefits from this buzz that is generated from the controversy. Wow, these guys are panicking. It must mean that whatever we're doing is right, and let's put more JPEGs onto it. This can get people will pay higher prices for it. Holy shit. Yeah, this is they're doing free advertisement. I just find this dynamic really interesting, and yeah.
I find Jeremy, you mind if I say something real quick?
No, go on.
Thanks. Yeah, just I actually was thinking before we started this, somebody should set like 2 clocks and be like, how long do we talk about BCH and how long do we talk about BTC? but to say something about BCH, like all of this, and like Dinopawnz was saying exactly, is why I always repeat that old Latin phrase, the ex falso quodlibet, right? From falsehood explosion. Once you allow, like Uname was saying, some kind of ridiculous, incorrect, false narrative into your head, you end up at some very wrong conclusions or very strange conclusions or places where you can trick yourself. And that's where BTC is today. There's such a crisis because there's no real underlying philosophy or unified vision to the whole thing anymore. It didn't make any sense since 2017. And now when it actually reaches a crisis, it's like everybody's got their own idea, and it's like, which one is right? Is it okay to have these JPEGs and NFTs and so forth on BTC, or is it not okay? And the real answer is it doesn't matter. It's just kind of funny, but because whatever you choose can be whatever BTC is, because it doesn't have a kind of direction anymore. So yeah, but like Uname said, like as long as you're going with kind of the BTC is the marketing chain. Dinopawnz said it in a very generous way as store of value. I think I agree more with Uname that it's more like the marketing chain. It doesn't actually have utility. It's known as the thing where you store value. Okay. So as long as it's that, probably the NFT approach makes more sense with that, but that's not an acceptable public position to have, that, oh, well, this is just the Beanie Babies chain. It's just for collectibles and stuff. Doesn't do anything. That's not really an acceptable public position. So yeah, they're really in a pickle. They're stuck on what to say because there's no really reasonable narrative. So to talk the 5% about BCH, I think that's something to learn, is always be very careful, right? Don't allow yourself to start believing bullshit or believe your own bullshit. Like, always be skeptical and analyze your own thoughts and new ideas, and check if they actually make sense, not only today, but if you carry them into the future when Bitcoin Cash is carrying a large amount of commerce for the whole world. So yeah, let's keep rational.
Dinopawnz, you want to jump in there?
Right. So I think something we also maybe have to address here is that these ordinals on the Bitcoin chain, can they even be classified as NFTs? They really aren't, right? I think most people are referring to them as, like, digital artifacts, because first of all, to even attain one of these ordinals right now, it's incredibly difficult, right? And if you're going to have NFTs on any blockchain, you need it to be accessible to people, right? Otherwise, what are we really doing with these NFTs? Are they even NFTs if there's no marketplace for them? There's no. I think right now, if you wanted to get an ordinal, right, I think you'd have to go on this certain Discord chats, and you'd have to do peer-to-peer and trade with somebody who owns a node and who created an ordinal. And obviously this goes against the whole Bitcoin, everything we know about crypto is you don't do these scammy these scammy trades where you're just giving away your Bitcoin to someone and hoping they give you something back. That's you don't do it that way. And so, and I think the second way of getting a Bitcoin ordinal is you go on Ethereum and you buy an NFT that promises that you will own an ordinal or something. So right now you don't really have NFTs on Bitcoin. Really, they're ways to imprint a message or a picture onto the Bitcoin chain and just take up space, maybe do some advertising. So calling them NFTs is also a little bit generous, I think. These ordinals are something different.
I actually want to, I don't know if it's correct that, because I don't know all the details of it, but I think there's really two issues there. One of them is tooling. And because for all the reasons we've been talking about since 2015, BTC development has just stifled. It's just not gone anywhere for a very long time. And because of that, there's no tooling, there's no good wallets, there's no things that can handle smart contracts natively. You're all stuck with like old generation, very basic stuff. And so they are, I think, my understanding, they are real NFTs. And I can try to explain the basics of it. I hope I'm right. But the tooling makes it exactly like you said. You can't actually use them. They're not accessible. Then you aren't able to work with them because there's no tooling, there's no wallets, there's no applications. Nothing's been built.
Not yet,
for
right?
years.
But there could be, right?
Yeah, there could be. But the reason they are real NFTs is because the stats themselves are the NFTs. So you can identify, according to the ordinal rules, like this particular sat, this particular Satoshi. For people listening, anybody who doesn't know, Satoshi is the smallest division of a Bitcoin. It's the actual like basic unit of Bitcoin, not Bitcoin. Satoshis are the basic unit, and you can uniquely identify one Satoshi according to this thing. That's like it was made in this block and this period and this epoch and whatever. They have this whole like numerology set up or whatever. But it's objective. You can objectively confirm like, yeah, this Satoshi is that one from that block and that period of time and so forth. And so if you do that, that sat itself becomes the NFT. And that's really what the ordinals are. And then on top of that, they've thrown in this hack where they're like, oh, and you can also throw a JPEG on it if you want to, or Doom or whatever it is that you want on top of it. And I don't know if that data is considered to travel with it. I don't think it does. But the data is still there originally, but the ordinal itself is the sat. And as far as I understand, it is an NFT if you consider it in the terms of this sat is a particular one out of all the other sats, something like that. I don't know how much it actually goes into a contract. I think it's just the sat itself.
But then, so the idea is then you can sort of mint in quotes what they call inscribe. You can inscribe the Satoshi. Yeah. So you create it, and then obviously in that same transaction, you also put in the wizard picture. And then as you obviously you can transfer around the Satoshi and you can track who has it at any one time. And then if they want to see what was the thing on that, then you have to sort of go back to the start of the chain and then look, okay, here's the wizard picture. Yeah. I think that's.
And you can also easily destroy it by, not destroy it, but like remix it back into the pool by screwing it up and make it not qualify as the first sat in the transaction kind of thing.
Oh, okay. All right. So you can sort of burn them or regenerate them somehow. And of course that also comes down to tooling. Is people are gonna lose in quotes these because their wallet like just mixes it up in another transaction that they sent off. I
don't know.
Somewhere, exactly. There's going to be a whole thing around that. Obviously, that's been a big thing with cash tokens for BCH has been that if you don't, if your wallet doesn't understand it, it's not going to screw up your tokens. And that was a problem that BCH had on SLP. So this is just another element to this entire arc where the BTC community are just learning the lessons that the BCH community has already learned, but several years late, because like you said, once you start with some nonsense in there, well, then that adds signal to noise, ratio decreases, and suddenly it takes longer to get to the same actual scientific endpoint, right? And so obviously on this episode we're going to talk a lot about BTC, but I think it's important to weave in the kind of BCH elements to that. And on this show we don't really usually do a lot of drama about what's going on in BTC, certainly not recently, but I thought this one was too perfect to pass up. And one element to it I really want to hit on as well is the fact that this is all essentially self-inflicted, right? So firstly, the original capping of the block size limit was self-inflicted, and because you could just raise it, which is what BCH did, and that has then snowballed on to this scenario now where they can have problems with the fee market that they said they wanted, but now they're starting to get it with these NFTs, and now they're realizing maybe they don't want it because it's going to screw up Lightning and all that. And then you have the element that the actual problem in terms of the exploit with SegWit and Taproot, that was their upgrade. They put that in. Their devs coded that up and it got put in, and nobody found or discovered or reviewed this or whatever. And it got in and it sat in there for a little while until somebody tripped over it. So that's another element that for the entire rest of the crypto space, obviously BCH for historic reasons, but literally everybody else is like, you guys have just shot yourselves in the in the foot. So it's actually quite funny. And then there's a third element that's self-inflicted in terms of the culture, in terms of this whole, we're going to be toxic maximalists and we're the superior chain that has sound money and we don't go in for this NFT nonsense and yada yada yada. And now it's just karma has come back to bite and it's flipped that around on them. And now suddenly all those people are in a mess because either they have to cope with the fact, oh, well, we said we weren't about NFTs and that's all stupid nonsense, so we need to dig it out of our chain.
SV weather might be okay.
That's right. Or they either have to change their position to justify, oh, well, suddenly now we can do it, so I'm going to rationalize that now it's okay. Or they have to put their money where their mouth is and they have to push back on this stuff and find a way to dig it out or stop it, which is just creating rifts in their own community. So I want to get everybody's take on whether or not you think, obviously, the Schadenfreude echoing around the whole crypto scene as a result of this. Obviously, we can take a moment to enjoy it because the BTC community got their laughs while we had the BSV split and the eCash split and coin split. Sometimes things come good in your favor. So I want to get everybody's kind of take on that, but also just the idea that does this exploit being found, does it also drive a wedge into the BTC idea that we have the best developers and we have the smartest developers, which that's been something that they've said for a long time. That's not the reality, really, because the fact is a lot of good devs just ditched out of their scene as soon as they were unfriendly to that. But they believe that in their mind, but now they have a case of their own screw up coming back to bite. Does that put a dent in that, Jett?
I just commented about this. In my mind, it's either they didn't foresee the potential for this to ever be an issue, which means that they didn't do enough testing, or they did enough testing, saw the issue, and just ignored it. Either way, there's no way you can look at that and go, these are great developers.
Right. There's no not incompetent outcome of that questioning, right?
Yeah. I don't have much. And then seeing them, like all the core developers talk about it on Twitter and be like, this is a fucking problem. We need to start censoring things. Like, no, you're the problem. You screwed this up. You made your bed, lay in it.
Well, there's also if you steel man the position, right? Everybody fucks up at some point. Even if you have a lot of people looking at something, you can still fuck something up, especially if you've got a fucking monster like SegWit as a soft fork plus Taproot on top of it to deal with. Like, it's complex and ugly and really easy to fuck up. But when you fuck up, you take the L, right? You take the fucking L. Those guys can't take the L. Like, you were saying in chat, like, about Luke Jr., he's just like, oh, it's tricking the node. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's tricking the node. You fucked up. Just own it, right? Like, and then move on. That would be fine. But I haven't seen that at all. It looks more like trying to figure out the narrative. Like, oh shit, what should we say? Is what it looks like is going on. I don't know. I'm not in those rooms, so I don't know.
So I'm just gonna jump in here. So I think in this decentralized space, I mean, obviously this is a fuck up on developers' parts, but it's just so hard for an entire community to accept that something is a fuck up, because especially for this, because they don't, it's yeah, we don't, nobody can know for sure. It's like, is this something that we want in Bitcoin, or something that we don't? So obviously there's half the Bitcoin community is in favor of this accident, is what they're calling it. It's just like a happy accident, right? Where it's like, okay, look, this is great for us, guys. You guys are all seeing this wrong right now. This is going to make Bitcoin more enjoyable. It's going to bring in new, like, mass is going to start like a whole new bull run for us. This is something we should be accepting. Like, it's already part of our code right now. Like, it's been here for a while. We just figured out how to access it now, thanks to this Taproot upgrade. So why not just accept it? And then we have the other half of Bitcoin going, no. This is not what we want in the Bitcoin. Like, we do not need our fees going up and our space being used up by all these JPEGs. And so now we have the whole Bitcoin community just split on this matter. Like, what do we do? Do we start, like, what are we going to decide on? And now it's so difficult because it's a decentralized space. So how do you decide these matters? How do you come to a consensus on these things? Is very difficult. And so I honestly think it's just going to stay this way for a while, because I don't think they're going to ever be able to come to a official agreement. So they're just going to leave it as it is.
Yeah, and I think
probably has something to say about whether it's actually a decentralized ecosystem.
Well, that's what we're going to find out, right?
Yeah.
So just before we get that, like, take it, it's just kind of this idea that the Bitcoin community, stalled in so many ways in 2017, and they don't. It's not even that they have now come across a problem. Like you said, that's inevitable. You're always going to have a problem, but they don't have any of the mitigating strategies. They have invested no time in deciding what is the process for a change, what is the process to debate what should be allowed and should be, all those meta things are very hard won in a decentralized ecosystem. They don't have multiple node implementations to any significant decree. So now you have people making these, patching in these sudden fixes and things, and just wait. But this is all last minute, that suddenly it's now we've got like the breakaways from Bitcoin Core that found their own lease on life and are just cracking along at 100 miles an hour, but they've just come completely out of left field. There's been no existing relationship there, nothing.
That point is really big. There's a bunch of people actually running their own modified nodes. That was the beginning of not the beginning. That was like the beginning of the real split of BTC and BCH. It was when people dared to run something besides core that set them off. And they're set off right now, but somehow they're being pretty quiet about it. So yeah, I think they haven't figured out the response yet.
What's your take on this?
So I want to comment on people running their own versions that have different rules. So technically speaking, people can run a node that doesn't actually soft fork and just block the relay of this really large transactions and enforce a relay rule in an attempt to block them. And if a very, very significant amount, a very, very significant number of them that definitely should include at least some of the miners and many of the other big hubs of activity like exchanges do this, then they can make they still cannot censor these transactions indefinitely, but they can make their lives pretty inconvenient. So that is possible. But if enough people do that, then in the process, they would also further split the mempool stats of the network, making the already very crumbly zero conf status even worse. And
especially if it fills up. If it fills up differently in different parts of the network, that will be havoc.
Yeah. So we learned that a while ago on BCH. We went through this debate when we were crafting the lifting of unconfirmed chain limitations. from 25 to essentially unlimited, among other things, and also double-spend proofs. But that debate hasn't been going on nearly as much until recently on BTC, because a very significant portion of them, including most of the technical people over there, simply stated outright that zero conf should not be a thing ever. But it's been clear that a lot of their businesses and users still rely on it, and it's So if any of this relay rule enforcement thing starts gaining traction, it will be even worse. It's kind of interesting to watch, as a what not to do thing.
I think this,
because I mean, in the worst case, I don't think it would happen, but in the worst case, you get those mempools significantly differentiated. So there's like two kind of versions of the mempool. You know, the ordinals mempool and the pro-ordinals mempool and the non-ordinals mempool. You start the risk of orphan blocks starts to go up, right? Assuming there's some miners in that group, but yeah, it gets messy. Sorry, Jett, I'm sorry.
No worries at all. I think that makes for a fantastic transition to this tweet from Adam Back here, talking about censoring.
Yeah.
Like, exactly, right on. So, Jeremy, if you want to...
So, yeah, let's get to that. Yeah. So obviously, just in this intervening slide, I just had here the fact that this is all a problem because ordinals have been popular, and that's just one key point to put in. Nobody knows if it's going to keep exploding in popularity and this problem's going to get worse, if it's going to be kind of a fad and die off, but even just, it's already caused a load of drama, but it could potentially get even worse. We're here obviously reviewing it now on the 11th of February, but in a month we're going to have a whole set of new info about this thing. So then, the drama started even quite early with this, as soon as this was found, because Adam Back then tweeted on the 29th of January, so this was nearly 2 weeks ago, it's also fair game for miners to censor the crap as a form of discouragement, right? So he then later deleted this tweet and tried to backtrack on it and yada yada. But among the many narrative inconsistencies being exposed here, there's this one of Adam Back, again, obviously famously of Blockstream and Bitcoin Core and heavily involved in the split, and Bcash is a scam and so on and so on. He is now advocating essentially against the core principles of Bitcoin, which were always, immutability, censorship resistance, trustless, open to everyone, those kind of fundamental principles. Well, lack of censorship was one of them. That's the whole value proposition of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency generally, as opposed to a bank, is that nobody can stop you. But now he's suddenly advocating, well, we need to stop people doing this thing. And it came about as a result of the fact that this exploit has popped up without going through the usual gatekeeping approval process that he sort of presides over. So the fact that it's in now, there's nothing he can do about it, but he can have a bit of a rage, and so on Twitter, exposed to at least some people. Obviously everybody outside the scene already knew, like, Adam Back, you're a hypocrite and the ideas make no sense. But now even some of the people inside the community were suddenly like, wait, what are we suddenly advocating for? And it comes to that same point again about what Bitcoin is or should be or should stand for, because they've sold out the principles long ago, and now the chickens are coming home to roost, really.
Well, it's funny, right? Because he's not wrong. If some censoring was going to happen, it would be the miners. They would be the ones who would have to just kind of collectively agree, like not that, anything but that. But it's just funny that Adam Back chooses ordinals as the thing to say, oh, this is worth crossing the like kilometer wide red line, like this is worth crossing that for ordinals. What? Yeah, no, it just nonsense from top to bottom.
But the miners are not likely to do that, right? I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are, right? But the miners are a very strange, and unique entity in cryptocurrency. I think they're a fascinating part of the ecosystem, and they sort of, on one hand, they're the ones with the nukes. They can they can really do a lot of damage if they want, but also they're also the ones with the most at stake. They're also going to be launching the nukes on themselves in a lot of cases, which tends to keep them in line. And obviously Adam Back has had his own relations with the miners over the years in terms of bullying them or trying to convince them to work one way or another. And in this case, are the miners likely to get together, especially as a unified entity? Like Dinopawnz is saying, the community itself is split. The miners are probably similar. There's probably some that don't like it and some that do, but surely, for the most part, the miners are making bank off this because they're getting more transaction fees. So
not only that, but they'd have to fight it. They would have to orphan blocks and pay to orphan blocks. No way they can update them.
I mean, in a sense, the miners are the community. That's what makes the Bitcoin chain decentralized in the first place. And so in this chain, all the miners would have to agree that this ordinal thing is bad. It wasn't meant to be part of Bitcoin. And that's pretty much what Adam Back is trying to say in his tweet. Originally, what he was trying to say in his tweet is I don't think he has a problem censoring things. The problem here that he ran into is that the problem that he ran into is just that the community is split on whether this is a real problem or not. And in order to get the miners to actually do something about this, they would all have to collectively agree that ordinals is a massive problem that was never meant to be a part of Bitcoin. And so now they would censor, but because the community is so split, in whether this is actually a good or a bad thing, the miners are going to be the same way. And if anything, the miners are even going to be more inclined to support this ability to have ordinals, because if it's making them bank, it's only helping their pockets, lining their pockets. So of course, I think the majority of miners are actually going to be in support of this, and they are. I think they are in support of this new ordinals ability. And yeah, I don't expect them to make any changes, and that's why I think it's gonna stay the same way it is.
Well, so the BTC community have actually sort of, in an inadvertent way, and this is part of why there's contention over it, they've kind of given themselves a gift in the fact that the NFTs have been driving usage of their change and have been having people pay higher fees, which was what they supposedly wanted. But now they've kind of got, it's one of those cases you get what you want and then you suddenly say, yeah, no, but not like that, right? It's kind of like we wanted high fees and we wanted a fee market and we wanted people paying, like there's this argument now that, oh well, people the NFTs are going to sort of die away, and Michael Saylor's $2 billion Bitcoin transactions, he'll be willing to pay $100 for that, the most immutable, perfect block space, or Tesla, or JP Morgan Chase, or whoever transferring their Bitcoin is going to be prepared to pay more than these NFT speculators who might only be willing to pay $50 for their NFT. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, then what about everybody else who was in the chain below that, the regular plebs who are supposed to use Bitcoin? Suddenly they're confronted with the reality that maybe their competition is not only Michael Saylor at $100, which they were fine with because he was pumping the price and supposedly creating institutional adoption, but it might also be NFT speculator. They might be at the bottom of the barrel where either they're forking out a ton of cash to move their Bitcoins around, or they're kind of just screwed.
Yeah, it's total Schrodinger's the fee market, Schrodinger's fee market. It's like, no, it's totally gonna work based on the fee market, but then the next 100 tweets will be like, it's still cheap, I can still get a transaction in. Right? It's like, well, which one are you gonna go for?
Yeah, and in the end, it kind of can't be both. So as we've said, the community has been super split about this. So I'm not the deepest, obviously, on the BTC community. I'm not following all the trend makers and whatever, but from my observation, I've roughly split the response down into 3 categories. There's essentially the Pro-Ordinals camp, who I've called the Taproot Wizards, or that's what some of them at least have called themselves. You've got the Anti-Ordinals camp, who are the classic maximalists I've branded, and then you have these kind of neutrals who are a bit in the middle. So the Taproot Wizards, to start with them, are the ones who are like, this is great, this is amazing, and amusingly, it's being led by this kind of how do you say, clique maybe of well, there's these three guys I know in particular: Eric Wall, Nick Carter, and Udi Wertheimer, who are all big sort of BTC Twitter celebrities or trendsetters, and they were all on, famously on the small block side of the block size war. But then in the subsequent years, especially recently, have started to come to the understanding, like, maybe we screwed up. In fact, in the intro for this year, we have Eric Wall, that same guy, saying, maybe we were wrong about big blocks. Like, were we the bad guys, right? Over the last year or two, these guys had to kind of deassociate themselves from a lot of that toxic maximalism, laser eyes, blah blah blah, and they started investing in ETH, and they started spreading out their kind of bets in the crypto world, because they unplugged to some extent from a lot of this BTC nonsense. Now they've suddenly been given this gift where they can have fun with all NFTs and things that they think are great on BTC, but it's kind of a bit of a like personal rivalry as well in there, because by promoting this and by having a grand laugh about this, they're kind of sticking it to all the laser eyes and all the people who've been saying, oh, you're not a true Bitcoiner and you never were, and so this social schism is happening where you have this kind of progressive Taproot wizards who are jumping on this change, probably because they would have agreed with it in a vacuum, but there's certainly an element of kind of rivalry or flaunting, what do you say, thumbing your nose at the people who were already starting to sort of isolate them out of the community, and now they're kind of back with a vengeance. And that's obviously had a lot of popular support in some sense. A lot of the people who have seen that Ethereum is kicking off and NFTs have been a huge driver and all that. It's just fun and cool, and it's just that kind of element of crypto culture seeping in as well. So yeah, takes on this kind of side of the aisle.
It's also, in my opinion, the only consistent view. For the ones on the flip side who are like, no, it's a peer-to-peer cash, or still try to claim something like that, it's just like, no, it's never gonna work as that. It's been broken. So yeah, as far as I see, like that kind of maverick group is the only one that's actually self-consistent, right? It's like, oh, it's good marketing. Yeah, it is. Look, BCH ecosystem is fucking talking for hours about BTC. What the hell? Right? Yeah, it's great marketing.
And
you were going to say the other group too, right?
Yeah, okay, all right. And then, well, obviously you can contrast them with the sort of what I've called the classic maximalists, maybe, who are sort of the anti-ordinals. So that's like Adam Back, who we talked about, Luke Jr., this guy, Shinobi. There's a bunch of it's more the sort of laser eye types. Hodlo Nord, I think, is in there with these kind of guys. And they've come up with this idea that ordinals are an attack on Bitcoin. So I have this laser eye guy here, Ordinal Disrespecter, who tweeted, Bitcoiners face the facts. An exploit was found and the current rules here become insufficient. The system is being subverted to serve an entirely different purpose. We are under attack. Ignoring it will not make it go away. Embracing it is to become a traitor. And then he's got a picture of the yellow and black ANCAP colors with the BTC logo and don't JPEG on me in there, obviously, like the Gadsden flag. So these are the guys who are trying to do this ordinal disrespecting kind of thing, like Imaginary Username was saying, change up their node settings to sort of block or downplay the impact of these transactions. But in that respect, they might not have the momentum and the majority that they need. Typically, this is the side that has been the kingmakers. They've been in control of the development repo and the changes that got in. And they, like with Jeremy Rubin at the end of last year, they were able to fend off any kind of progressive changes or ideas that are not in the blessed bounds of what is acceptable. But of course, this change has been an exploit. That's it. It's found its way in unexpectedly, and that's what's thrown the whole thing into chaos. Because when you're used to being the one who's the gatekeeper that says yes or no to what is the status quo, which is very sticky on a decentralized network, they've now found themselves on the other side of the fence where something got in without them realizing it, and digging it out is a completely different mountain to climb compared to blocking it from getting in the first place. Blake?
I wanna amplify that, because there's the aspect of it that yeah, they fucked up, but yeah, well, so first, they don't really have any ground to stand on in the first place, right? Like the whole like pure store of value, and it's still P2P cash through Lightning. Like none of that ever had any foundation in the first place. So they don't have anything to stand on there. But not only that, it's much worse than that, because if you look at your history of how the BCH and BTC split happened, there was a bunch of backroom meetings between basically Blockstream or Blockstream representatives or DCG, the digital currency group representatives and miners, and they convinced them like, hey, all this other, I don't know what happened in those backrooms, but fundamentally what came out of it was like, look, you should trust us. We're the ones to trust. We're the ones that are going to make this work, because we're, blah, blah, blah. And those, that rabble over there. Now the miners will look at them and be like, oh, you're the ones to trust, are you? Right? Is that right? So how did this bug get in there? How did this hack get into it, right? So now they don't only have a kind of philosophical or economic ground to stand on, they also don't have a political ground to stand on, because that political ground is how the BCH BTC split went the way it did. I mean, among many reasons, but that's a big part of it. Now they don't have that ground to stand on either. So yeah, it's totally ripe for at least a social split. Whether it ends up turning into a network split is a totally different question, but it's really interesting from the political aspect also.
Okay, so for me, I feel like this conversation is a very difficult one, because if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a Bitcoin maxi, and in this position, I don't know, what the correct thing to do at this point would be. Which side of the fence would I want to stand on? And I think it has to do with, we don't know how far these ordinals can really go. Like, is Bitcoin able to do what Ethereum does now? Like, or is there going to be marketplaces for these ordinals? Like, do we even want to dive into this sector of what Bitcoin can be, or do we just want to stick to what we've been doing for the last 10 or so years? And do we, like, right now it's a very difficult discussion to have. And I think that the Bitcoin, Bitcoin as in general, their whole community has to kind of sit down and discuss what they want their future to look like here, because now with the introduction of these ordinals, everyone's talking about it on Twitter, right? And I just don't know, if you're a Bitcoin maxi, is there room for ordinals on the blockchain, on this Bitcoin blockchain? I don't know what honestly the correct side of the fence to stand on would be.
It's all funny on every side. I can answer one aspect of what you were saying though, whether it can be, like this whole EVM like marketplaces and so forth. Completely impossible on BTC today, and given the political control of BTC, the people who control it, they put themselves in a corner. No hard forks, no major changes, a lot of limitations they've put on themselves without any of it. It could be, which is where BCH is going, right? We're trying to make scripting very powerful, so that you can do pretty powerful things on chain with Bitcoin Cash. BTC cannot do those things, and without doing hard forks or crossing some of these Rubicons, like Jett said, crossing these red lines. If they don't cross those red lines, there's literally no way that they can do those things. So they have to cross a bunch of lines to get anywhere close to like, hey, are we going to do something like as powerful as EVM? That's so far away.
Right, and I think that's where the problem lies. I don't think Bitcoin is willing to cross those lines. I don't even think they want to cross this original line of having ordinals in the first place. I think that most blockchains, actually, they want to stay exactly the same. They just want to have a set of rules they agree on, and that's it. Nothing changes ever. Whereas in the Bitcoin Cash space, we're actually a little bit different because we believe in this ever-growing block size. So for Bitcoin Cash, we're actually always changing to accommodate to the community, you know, make sure the fees always stay low. Whereas, you know, other chains like Bitcoin, it's 1 megabyte. They don't intend to ever change off this 1 megabyte. The fact that you're able to include now like a 4 megabyte digital picture is not, I don't think that's what they ever intended. It's just an accident that resulted from Taproot. And right, I don't think they want to cross even more barriers to accommodate for this accidents. Yeah, I think if you're in Bitcoin, in the Bitcoin community, you're more likely to want to revert changes and go back to what they've had for the last, how many years has it been now? So a decade.
Yeah, so there's
decade,
certainly an element here that there's a significant chunk of the BTC people that I've seen who kind of have the take of, well, if the choice was we don't have ordinals, do we want to add it? I would have voted no. But now that we have it, we kind of are just got to put up with it because A, we don't have a process to decide how to dig it out, and B, this kind of miraculous what's it called, perfect conception or whatever of BTC, that the way it is the perfect thing handed down to us by Satoshi and solidified in the block size was blah blah blah. That kind of means that, well, it found its way in, therefore it must be correct, kind of thing. And having a take to change that isn't really viable for a lot of them. Do you have a thought about these warring camps? What's your observation of the politics?
So on the social side, I mean, people have this impression that, oh, this warring camps actually means something, but ultimately it's probably not going to amount to very much, because ultimately, as we have seen in the replaced by fee little drama we had a while ago, a few people can just get in the dark room and put a commit on the GitHub, and then that's how it's decided anyway. So yeah, like in terms of actual decisions, like all the drama is kind of a distraction. So.
But this wouldn't be a case
really
of that, though,
that.
right?
Wait,
isn't it like it wouldn't? But this isn't a case where they can just make a little update to BTC and push it out. Firstly, because the update would not be trivial to code. No, they can make an update to Bitcoin Core and push it out, right? But the lashback would be mega, because there's actually a huge amount of the community that don't agree with them, and they don't have necessarily all the node operators willing to just click upgrade like they have every other time, right? Especially not if these influences are again.
So there are two ways you can do it. One way to do it would be to do a relay upgrade, or a relay modification, because it's not necessarily an upgrade. A relay modification, and people will probably bitch about it, and the people who bitch about it will probably not run that version, but eventually at the next soft fork, it will probably get forced in anyway, because there will be no other versions that doesn't contain it. But that's a pretty ineffective way. But if you really want to push it, you can try to force a soft fork. That will be really effective, but that would also generate a lot of backlash. But these two mechanisms are probably not the main things that concern them, because my prediction is that small number of people, despite whatever drama that is going on outside, like this particular thing is probably not the thing that they will actually be worried about. Like they will just do nothing. Doing nothing is also a decision that can be made, and if they do nothing, then the other camp is going to be upset for a while, and then people will just move on and accept it as a part of life. So, yeah.
I think that's what's funny, because I think doing nothing is always the simplest solution, and the one that most people will end up going to if if you're met with these two very difficult choices, what's going to end up happening is usually nothing, and it's just going to continue going that way.
Yep.
So just one extra spice pepper to this conversation is the political one, which I mentioned before, which is if core Blockstream, whoever it is you want to say controls the client, decides to close this loophole to disallow the inscriptions, they would still be allowing ordinals, but not the huge inscriptions. I think is what the hole would close. So then they would have a viable way to say, look, we're not killing the thing, we're just killing the half of the thing, and we're still allowing the other part of the thing. So there's kind of a gray argument they could pull out of their hat for it. But the spicy part is, now that there's people who have maybe a concept that they can stir some shit, like you said, thumb their nose at people, and these are people who have some resources, they have some money, or maybe there is like people who genuinely believe that they could set up marketplaces like Dinopawnz was saying, and come up with viable money spinner, right? Like some kind of NFT money spinner. When there's money involved, then you start to have the possibility that somebody gets motivated enough to put up a competitor, to put up a competing node and say, look, this is the one everybody should run. And somebody like that would have the knowledge, now that we've seen everything that happens, like, okay, now I got to go convince miners, I got to go convince exchanges. It's a completely non-trivial process, and it'll be extremely contentious. But I mean, that's what splits are made of. If somebody influential gets that in their head, that that's something that needs to happen, yeah, it could cause all kinds of problems, whether it ends up leading to a split or not. But yeah, I suspect that the threat of that is exactly why nothing has been publicly said at this point, is because they're trying to figure out how to thread the needle and maintain control of the whole narrative, as well as the nodes, the mining nodes.
So this is a good topic to dive into. Is a split likely? Okay, and because there's several ways that it could come about, right? It could come about because the BTC core people say we need to shut off inscriptions. They make a change to do that, and only some of the people that they expect to follow them do follow them, and some of them don't. And one way or another, that wrangles its way into there's two versions of Bitcoin, and then we're once again, they're fighting over the BTC ticker and brand name, and lobbying exchanges and talking to the miners and all this in this very messy world. So that's one way it could happen, or it could happen the other way, like you're saying, that somebody says, "Wait a second, we've got a small little wedge foot in the door here. This is going great. Let's expand that. I'm gonna make. We're gonna purposely do a split where we're gonna say, guys, obviously this is a lot better. This BTC with NFTs and stuff. Why don't we have BTC with X, Y, and Z new things that I think would also be awesome? And we're gonna just proactively charge on that. That would be a tougher sell to win over the brand name. But on the other hand, maybe if there was a good amount of support for it, or potential cash to be made, maybe it would.
They don't even have to get the brand name to cause a hell of a lot of problems for the chain. I don't think it'll actually happen. Somebody will have to be really motivated to make that happen. It's non-trivial, completely non-trivial to make it happen, and to take the social exclusion that will probably happen from doing that. But if somebody's trollish enough and has the resources, they can do it. They could do it today if they wanted to.
So I don't think there's going to be a chain split over this, and I think that if Bitcoin wants to, I think it can actually roll back on this whole inscription thing, because if there is no intention on building up on top of this and growing out ordinals in some other way, then really like what you can do here is, first of all, ordinals are not even accessible to most of the community. Like I'm going to say 99.9% even. It's incredibly difficult to get your hands on an ordinal, and it's incredibly hard to even create your own. And so because of this inaccessibility, really most people should not be too bothered if they roll back on this this whole inscription thing. And I think people might complain about it for like a day or something, but then after about a day, they're gonna be like, okay, look, we're just back to Bitcoin as we know it for the last decade. So I actually think if they wanted to roll back, now would still be a very good time to do it before things are built on top of this, before we start seeing Bitcoin ordinal marketplaces, things that are going to make it so that the community is like, oh, I already have an ordinal, like no, you can't roll back on it now. Like I all my friends have one. I'm building a whole thing around this. I have utility based like with my ordinal. Like now there's a whole ecosystem. Now you can't stop it now. There's gonna be problems later on. But as of right now, this moment, I actually think it is pretty simple to just roll back on this and be like, okay, guys, you know what? Someone's making an executive decision, and we're just going to go back to how it was.
When you say
I don't think it'll be that hard, because they can actually allow, as I understand it, they can allow ordinals and block the inscriptions, right? So that even allows them a pretty gray, easy space to work in, where it's like, yeah, you can still do your NFTs, you just can't do the JPEG part of it or the Doom part of it.
When you say rollback, you're not talking about a chain rollback, right? Just removing this feature.
Just removing the feature.
Yeah, okay. A chain rollback. I was
No,
like,
chain rollback would be crazy.
They've talked about that before, and it did not go well.
Forget about that.
Yeah.
It's gone too far at this point. It's more than a week into the future.
And if they want to fix it, and I think they need to start doing it now. If they wanted to remove this feature, it's got to start happening immediately. The longer they wait, the worse it gets.
Yeah, that's right. As more and more people get bought into it, and so yeah, we have this third camp as well. So obviously you have the Pro-Ordinals, wizards, and the Anti-Ordinals, classic maximalists, but then you have this very interesting camp that's also emerged, which I've termed, just out of my own decision, the neutrals, and they are kind of in this weird backtracking and cope scenario. So I have two quotes here, one from Pierre Rochard, who tweeted, 4 megabytes every 10 minutes is 210 gigabytes per year, around $10 of added disk space per year, around 30 minutes of additional initial block download per year with gigabit internet. I think we'll be okay on Feb 7th. And then you also have Stephen Livera, who was debating me a bit on Twitter, interestingly. And he said, in the recent craze about inscriptions on Bitcoin, one concern has been storage space. HDD and SSD costs have been coming down a lot over time. In 2017, a Samsung 850 EVO 500 gigabyte was about 28 cents per gigabyte. In 2023, a Samsung QVO 2 terabyte SSD is about $143. 7 cents per gigabyte of storage. That was on February 9th. So you've seen these people who've kind of weighed up both sides, and in the sense that, oh, it's in there now, nothing we can do about it. There's now been a lot of cover fire in terms of, guys, but it's fine. Don't worry. We've got these 4 megabyte blocks, and there's been a dual prong attack of, firstly, bringing up the classic. This was a hallmark of the big blocker argument that node costs are going to decrease over time. Hardware is going to get better. Therefore, we can scientifically evaluate that and raise the chain limits in accordance with the improvement in technology. At a minimum, maybe you could even do higher, but at the very least, if things get twice as better, you make the blocks twice as big. Problem solved. As long as storage costs are going down, bandwidth costs are going down, and technology is improving in all the other ways, then what's the problem, right? And that was always dismissed either by the theory that, oh, that's not going to last forever, or it's not viable at some point, or, okay, maybe the cost will go down, but that just means more people will run a node and we'll get even more decentralization. Not that the existing decentralization was enough, but that more decentralization would be even better as opposed to more capacity, right? But that's now all had to be reworked into, oh, okay, the big blockers were right, but they can't say the big blockers were right. Instead, it's just, oh, guys, have you heard that storage drives get cheaper? Like, you can even look at the last 5 years of data. But this is a dangerous path, because as soon as they're opening the door to scientific analysis of, well, suddenly it becomes a question of what was the correct block size? Is 4 megabytes the correct amount? And is it 1 megabyte or 4 megabytes? Because even though at the time SegWit was sold as, this is a sort of alleviating fix, it will allow a bit more capacity, it was never okay, this is equivalent to a 4 megabyte block size upgrade. Maybe technically that's what was theoretically feasible, but like we said at the start, the 4 megabyte blocks wasn't going to be a reality and hasn't been a reality until the arrival of these JPEGs. There's never been 4 megabytes of just Bitcoin, peer-to-peer financial transactions going on, and there never has been. So it's been very easy to sort of gloss over that part of it. But now we've got into that, and it looks like, well, maybe there is a world where the Ordinals people just spam up 4 megabytes every single block, and 4 megabytes is the way in perpetuity. But then if you talk to someone like Stephen Livera, who was arguing with me, then you say, okay, why is 4 megabytes the perfect amount? Why was 1 perfect, and why is 4 now perfect? Could it ever be raised again? And they don't really have a good answer for that, because how do you, well, they would have to do some scientific research or something and come up with this is the perfect amount. But then of course conditions will change, and then theoretically that limit should change. But as soon as you get into that whole line of reasoning, you've essentially become a Bitcoin casher. That was what we were saying and doing the whole time. And so all those blocks can kind of crumble. But you have John Carvalho as well and other people that are just sitting in the middle of this mess, like, well, we just got to rework our beliefs a bit, but without acknowledging it too much. I don't know, a very interesting middle ground. The
I
people
think that's
who
something
can pick a side.
Bitcoin Cash ecosystem just needs to not let itself get triggered. Totally expect at least some subset of people in BTC to just suddenly basically say everything that Bitcoin Cash people have been saying since 2014 and just start unironically saying the same things. And you just got to be not triggered by that because it's like, yeah, okay, you figured it out. Good. Like that's enough. Like there's no need for attacking or dunking on people. I don't think that'll really help us. Some people think it will, but I don't think it will. It's just going to distract us to go and dunk on people all day because it won't change their minds. They're never going to admit like, oh, you were right.
So for my personal part, I'm actually gonna discourage them. Like, no, don't do this. You guys are totally fine. Like, just continue doing what you're doing. Like, please don't do what we do. You guys are a separate chain right now. You have a different philosophy. You're doing exactly different, like very different things. You have your niche. We got our niche. Like, don't try to be BTC and BCH at the same time. That's freaking stupid. Like, don't do it.
That's
like,
a good message. Yeah,
it's bad for you. It's bad for you. It's bad for us. It's brand confusion. Brand confusion is kind of funny, but just like don't do it. Like if you actually want BCH, just come over to BCH. Like seriously. So yeah.
Right. I mean, I would encourage them giving the message of BCH saying, "Oh yeah, maybe increasing if they want to backtrack on what they originally believed and say, bigger blocks might not be that bad." I'm going to encourage that kind of language and be like, "Yeah, it probably is better. Why don't you come try BCH?" But as for BTC, you guys are your own thing. You might as well stay on track of doing what you guys were doing all along. If you want to be that store of value, keep being that store of value.
Yeah, obviously it's a decentralized ecosystem. Everybody can make their own take on it. I think personally it's worth at least poking them a little bit. Okay, you don't have to be a complete asshole about it or something, but I think obviously, well, it's certainly it's very indicative to me that Stephen Livera, I've been making this thread where I've been documenting some of the kind of shifting narratives and opinions, right? And the key reason I'm doing that is, well, firstly, so that some new people will come along and think, what is this? And they'll dig into the history and all that. But it's actually mostly for people who've been in the ecosystem a long time, and some of them will stumble across that and think, yeah, this is right. Look at all this logically laid out. This has been correct the entire time. What else is this guy saying, that I need to rethink through, basically, right? So that's my intention there. And you have someone like Stephen Livera who he's got 143,000 followers. He's got a big reach, big BTC person, blah, blah, blah. I've got 4,000, right? If he's wanting to chat with me and argue and discuss this, I'm not trying to piss him off. Okay, I'll work a little bit around, well, why is this sudden change of opinion, not being acknowledged, or how different ways that they're trying to square the circle, and there's just a fine line there. You can just be the sort of more mature adult and have an open, because we're going to win in an open, rational discussion. That's basically what it comes down to. And the fact that he was replying to me and engaging with it shows that part of, and John Carvalho likewise with Kallisti recently has been doing the same thing. That shows that the narrative is just crumbling at a massive speed, because censoring us isn't an option. We didn't go away. Ignoring us also isn't an option, because the voices are getting louder and louder, and things are moving in the direction of BCH anyway, like with this whole fiasco over the NFTs. It's just making our points for us, kind of thing. And so now it's coming down to, well, we've got to engage again. So we've gone from the engaging in discussion in the blocks as was, to shutting everyone, to ignoring them, to shutting them out. And now it's trending back the other way, right? So now we're getting some engagement and debate, and that is quickly going to turn into, wait, these voices are getting louder and louder, and there'll be bigger and bigger debates and discussions. I don't know, maybe Roger will get in some big zinger on Twitter that gets like a huge amount of traction with an unexpected group of people, or something like that, and it'll suddenly be like Bankless will be like, you know what, let's have a BTC versus BCH debate. Been a while. Now you've got NFTs, you're raising your block size. Let's hash it out again. And then suddenly it's like BCH will be right back in the game and in the discussion. That's my thought anyway. Jett?
Yeah, I think the general is right in that we shouldn't just dunk, but if BTC people are setting you up for the layup, take the layup. Absolutely.
Right.
I love that analogy.
Hey, I have a question for an angle that I haven't really thought through, and I wonder if any of you guys have. So if you look at it from the perspective of how decisions are actually made, right? In BCH, we have the chip process. We actually have a process for figuring things out, and we have a default of, like Dinopawnz was saying, the default is no to any kind of good idea. It's like, no, prove it, right? Prove it to everybody that it's a really good idea and not just a good idea. So we have that, but BTC does not have that. BTC has a BIP, which is a technical document. It's not a process at all. And so their actual process is more like, John Todd or previously Peter Wool, or whatever the guys who have commit access make a call, and who influences them. I mean, we saw it, right? There's Blockstream previously. There was the MIT group. There's DCG behind a lot of it. The funding coming behind a lot of it. So from those guys' perspectives, the ones that are kind of the guy behind the guy, this is probably all just like, oh my God, what is the rabble talking about? What are they talking about? And what is their motivations? The guy behind the guy, the people behind the people, what is their motivations here? I wonder what DCG thinks about this, because they're in the middle of a lot of shit right now with USDT, with all of their investments, with all of their centralized exchanges. And all of them having been fractional and then getting called out on it. They don't have the reserves. They're all bankrupt. Like all of his companies are bankrupt. They have these fucking billion-dollar fake financial deals going on that are getting called out by government agencies and so forth. They're in some really hot shit. And they probably don't give a fuck about any of this noise going on, right? But what does that mean? Because those are roughly the guys making the calls, right? So what do they think about this? Have you guys thought through that? Like what it looks like from their perspective? I mean, I have a little bit of a beginnings of thought about it, but not very deep. So,
well, I think that obviously, like you said, DCG is in a bit of a mess, and to the extent that whatever people were sort of arrayed against BCH at the time of the split in 2017 or earlier in 2015, the world moves on. It just does. Like whatever money and resources and time and effort and so on and so forth was spent on ensuring there was lockdowns on our Bitcoin, censoring of people, attacking Mike Hearn for running Bitcoin XT and starting his own new node implementation, what's it called, petitioning the miners, doing all this stuff, right? All this stuff, that's not time and effort and energy and money that is just coming out from nowhere, right? Somebody is spending resources on that, right? So here we are 8 or 9 years later. The world is messy, things move on. Those same people or interests or whatever who had the time and energy to fight that battle, at least some of them, probably not all of them, but at least some of them will have fresh problems on their hands. And so they can't, everything that we do in the BCH ecosystem is sort of in defiance of whatever pushback there is. So any gain that we're making, any forward ground that we're marching forward is done despite the pushback, right? And so that pushback it lessens over time. It has to. People are busy and they have a lot of different problems, and reality is very messy. So to the extent that there's just too many fires to put out, that's the whole kind of crypto ethos, really, in the terms of, well, there's now 20,000 coins. So government or whoever doesn't like crypto, they can't stop all of them. That's ship has long sailed. You can't even put out all the fires in one community anymore in the terms of like the BTC, this ordinal stuff is stopping, and all this little infighting is all time and energy that they're spending on that instead. So I think that's why I'm so bullish on, confident on BCH, because there's a confluence of factors where at the same time as our strength is rising and the narrative is changing in our favor, at the same time as that, the pushback is lessening. It might not be immediately visible, but there's people have other problems. If these BTC people are busy arguing amongst themselves in all these different ways, that's time and energy they're not spending either improving their own product, in which case it's easier for us to outcompete them, or they're spending it, sabotaging each other and whatever instead of us. That's brilliant.
Well, in the funniest case, in my imagination, there's Adam with Blockstream, and he's like, oh, we really need to have a position on this. And, he like picks up the red phone and he's like, hey, what should be our position on this Ordinals thing? And Barry Silbert is like, what the fuck? Stop bothering me with this bullshit. He picks up the phone. He's like, I don't give a fuck. We have Ethereum and all kinds of shit now. Just fuck off. And I have to deal with this USDT and fuck.
Yeah.
Don't bother me with this bullshit. But it could go the other way as well, right? Where they actually say, no, wait, let's approach this rationally. All of our games still hinge on propping up the value of BTC until we like fully exit the market, assuming they are still in the market in some way. So as long as their value proposition depends on propping up the price specifically of BTC, maybe they're going to take it very seriously also and say like, no. Whatever it is that keeps the price up. And they're like, yeah, but something. You're like, stop. Whatever it is that keeps the price of BTC up is what we're going to do. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not sure how they're looking at it. I'm not sure how invested they are still in BTC. That's basically the question.
I think the more you talk about Ordinals, though, if people sit down and talk about it and really think if it deserves a place in Bitcoin right now, I think that eventually it's going to trend to no. Even me, who's an NFT enthusiast, right? I don't know. Like, we have Ethereum, like you said, like the general was saying, we have Ethereum already. And that's probably what they're going to be talking about when they're having these discussions. They're going to say, look, we have Ethereum. Bitcoin was not meant to be like Ethereum. And even like myself, who dabbles in NFTs, I love NFTs. I don't know that it's Bitcoin's place to include them, because first of all, the accessibility, right? You'd have to have marketplaces and people who own NFTs and who like NFTs. There has to be a reason why they're purchasing these. And so right now, even if you wanted to even if you were one of those NFT buyers who just wants to hold things and then wait for the price to go up, you can't do that right now in Bitcoin. There's no way to buy and sell. And if you're a believer in owning, digital assets, once again, Bitcoin is not the right place to do this. This is something that Ethereum handles. And I like to say that, since I was very small, right, I've always been a believer in Bitcoin and NFTs, even before they came into existence, because, even as a child, all of my assets, my net worth was all digital, virtual. And this is something that, Ethereum shines at. You're able to hold all these virtual assets, these things. And in Bitcoin right now, it's just a JPEG, and it's like a picture of a neon cat. You cannot sell it, you cannot buy it. It doesn't hold any sort of real value. It's just kind of like a marketing scheme almost. You just create some sort of digital image, you post it on the blockchain, it's just there forever. And that's essentially what it does right now. I don't exactly know what it is, and using up the blockchain space for something so trivial, it doesn't seem like it's the right move. And so I think it's the more conversation you have on this matter, I think they should probably decide to just change it and change the protocol and just go back to the way it was before. My take on it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. The more I hear you talk about this, the more I sort of agree with you, in the sense that I think that Ordinals maybe will be a sort of a bit of a flash in the pan, where it's got hype, it's got momentum, everyone's into it at the moment, but the sort of the store of value and all that digital gold and all that kind of comes back into things, and people kind of think like, yeah, okay, that was fun for a couple of weeks, but do we really need this? In fact, the Ordinals had been on a big upward exponential growth in terms of daily amount of people doing it, like anything that's new and hype, and it has trended down for the last day and a half. We're only halfway through today, so it remains to be seen about today, but it doesn't look like it's going to keep continuing this explosive growth. Now, perhaps somebody will invent a newer, easier way to get involved in it that will suddenly open it up to a lot more people. That's certainly one possibility, but I can also see that the people who bought BTC in general think that they know what they've bought, and this NFT stuff kind of doesn't fit into the bigger picture of it. But we have a slide here of what are they going to do. Obviously, we've already talked about this. The wizards are happy with it. The undecideds are kind of like, don't know, but it's in, so it's in. And then the maximalists are unhappy and looking for a way to change it. Of course, the status quo is that if nothing changes, there will still be ordinals, but it could just be that it stays that way and it just dies off in usage and it comes to some small level which nobody's really that upset about. But I had a poll here from NVK, who is a big Twitter Bitcoin maxi type of guy, who put out a poll to see what was the community thinking of the different sort of options. So he said, I think it's a he, but I don't know. I said, not much to debate. The bickering is pointless. No one needs permission to make inscriptions. So you are left with three choices. Rollback Taproot had 8.3% support. Fix, in quotes, with yet new risks, got 3.8% support. Inscriptions are okay, got 51.8% or 51.8% support. And show answers got 36.1% support. So according to this poll, which was on February the 4th, the vast majority are kind of like, well, just let it be, maybe, it's upward of 70 or 80%. But I could see that given 3 months or 6 months, maybe Ordinals hype dies down a bit, that this poll then would rerun and change that kind of fix got a huge boost, and inscriptions are okay declined once it wasn't the hype new thing that everyone was confused about.
I want to make a call, Jeremy. So you can put me on record here.
Okay.
Thinking of it, because I've been just thinking through my own hypothetical there, and what is it that's going to make the price go up is hype and marketing. It's a marketing chain. It's all based on hype right now, or not right now, like for years. So what will do that? The inscriptions can actually fuck things up. So my guess is that they're going to close, because you remember you got to separate. I think it's possible. I'm not totally sure, but I think what's going to happen is they're going to block the inscriptions so that you can't do that and just say, hey, look, that was never intended. Yeah, we fucked up. We have to take the L somehow. But we're going to allow the ordinals, because the ordinals is just using Taproot. Like rolling back Taproot will just be beyond the pale. That will be such a huge admission of just so many failures at so many levels. And I don't think there's any way they're going to roll back Taproot. So they're going to leave Taproot, leave the ordinals, leave the NFT part of it, and block the inscriptions. Not the inscriptions, but up to whatever, some kind of size. Like ask Luke Jr. what's a reasonable size, and they'll set that number as the size for it. But so with the ordinals, I think those actually still fit pretty well with the whole like store of value, stacking sats. It's the purest, like hardest form of money, like all that stuff. Because fungibility, like they don't actually give a fuck, most of the people, about fungibility. Like, okay, so the sats can kind of be organized in this weird astrological way, this ordinal way. So yeah, I think they'll keep the ordinals and have just like an extra level of collecting, right? Of store of value, of rare collectible thing. And then they'll cut out the inscriptions. And so you'll be left with the NFT ordinals and some kind of tooling starting to build around that. And then the narrative doesn't really have to change, and they still get the benefit of hype that will possibly pump the price without the risk of like totally fucking up the operation of the network. I don't know. That's my guess, is they're just going to cut out the inscription part, and that's it.
So invest in Bitcoin punks. You heard it here first. All right, and then we've got what are the other options that from outside the community, just to contrast with that previous poll. We had Kurt Wackett Jr. from the BSV community ran a similar poll, but of course to a different audience and with different options, saying, how will small blockers nuke ordinals on BTC? So he's kind of taking the position that they are going to find a way to shut it off, like you're saying, or at least modify it. What's going to be the chosen tool? I've heard they're meeting behind closed doors at the Satoshi Roundtable. So his poll had the options: emergency BIP, 39.1%, orphan ordinal blocks, 13.7%, node policy setting, 22.9%, and threats of violence, 24.3%. I was a bit confused by this poll. I voted for the emergency BIP. I sort of felt like some change would get into Bitcoin poor. Yeah, that's kind of the existing thing. Orphaning ordinal blocks, I don't see that at all, because that takes too much miner involvement. Node policy setting, we actually have already seen some of that, so that's probably the correct answer with the knowledge that we have today. And threats of violence, I wasn't really sure. Who are you threatening? Like, I guess you can harass the miners or just try and shut down whoever likes the ordinals, but that seemed a bit of a weird option to me.
I don't even think they have to have an emergency BIP. They'll just call it a BIP. I mean, fucking Peter Todd gets a RBF, permanent RBF put in just on a whim practically. I don't even think they need to call it an emergency. They'll just put it up and blah 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 and make the thing happen.
Right. I feel like they can take their time. And I think even the first poll where they said that 51% in favor of ordinals, I also think that these polls are kind of a little skewed, because I feel like if I saw the same poll, I probably also would have been like, oh yeah, you know what, just include ordinals. It takes a little bit of critical thinking and sitting down and thinking about it to see like what the correct option is. If I started a poll and said, should I buy a bottle of water? Should I not buy a bottle of water? It's going to be like most people just say, yeah, to buy a bottle of water. Should I buy a puppy? Should I not buy a puppy? Buy a puppy. It's like if you give them an option to have more, something that gives them more options, something that gives you like something, people are going to choose something over nothing most of the time. And I think in this case as well, they're like, okay, yeah, if we have ordinals, you might as well start using them, see what it can do. But in the grand scheme of things, right now, it doesn't seem to be a problem. The fees of Bitcoin haven't they started going up a little bit. I think it's up to like $1 or something, right? Up from like 50 cents. But I don't think that people will see it as a problem until they really see the crippling of Bitcoin in terms of extremely high fees. If going back to the $20 mark, that's going to start at that point. You start having a serious conversation about what's causing this and if we should do an emergency BIP. At that point is when you start doing the emergency BIP on this ordinals and the inscriptions. But until then, I think that most people are going to see it as not too big of an emergency right now, and just enjoy it while it's here at least.
But DCG knows it's coming. I mean, there's a high probability that even just trolls will be enough to keep the blocks full. And if they do that, they know the fees are going to skyrocket. And that's why I think they'll cut off the inscriptions, or they'll put a hard limit on the inscriptions, because having that fee event happen again will cause a lot of cognitive dissonance from all the people who are like, wait, this wasn't supposed to happen again. Or, you know, facing them with the reality of what it means to have other people whose transactions are more valuable than yours, and therefore you don't get to transact, you don't even get to open lightning channels or anything. That will trigger a whole kind of avalanche of cognitive dissonance if that happens.
But the thing is, see, that's why it's interesting, is because if we see a huge ongoing growth of ordinals now, we could see the first ever Bitcoin fee crisis that happened outside of a euphoric bull run, right? Which would be a very interesting new twist of events. At the moment, we've only had them at the peak hype of 2017 after the split, and also in late 2020, early 2021, right? And then it's a self-correcting mechanism. Yeah, everyone's so excited. Everyone's trading around, and then, you know, that causes the fee crisis. Then everyone goes, okay, we got a bit too excited. Maybe this isn't ready to take over the world yet, right? But if the fee crisis triggers without a euphoric price hype, that would be insane. But if it doesn't happen, then we might it's just like a delayed bomb if they don't fix it, because then they're so much closer to capacity all the time now that if there was another fee, you know, you can imagine that BTC starts rising, ETH starts rising, everybody gets enthusiastic, the halvening, and then, but they, instead of hitting that crisis once they'd tripled in price, maybe they hit it when they've only gone up 40% or something like that. And then maybe ETH starts rocketing past them as everybody's like, well, fees are too high on BTC anyway, because it's all for this ordinal spam. Like maybe that would then be where the cost got paid. I don't know.
And in a bull run, the fees might go even higher than they used to be. I think in the last bull run, you know, the fees were touched like 20 something dollars. And if you have these ordinals, you know, they can go as high as like they can go even double. They can go double past that, because now there's even more fighting for that space in each block.
Yeah, it was $60 at the peaked at about $50 on the first one, and
the $60 crazy. So I just remember at like 20.
That's average like fee. $60. That's average, by the way. That's so people are paying like $300 or $400 a transaction, you know, at least.
And even worse than, in some sense, than the price was just the time, right? People got in the mempool and then they're like,
right. Even the time was an issue too.
My transaction
when does it get to the exchange?
3 days ago, a week ago, literally 2 weeks ago, it's gone. You know, and then they start looking at block explorers and it's like, wait, it's not even there anymore. Like transactions literally fell out of the mempool. In some cases they got put back in, but some cases they didn't. Yeah, it's all a big mess.
Right, it's been a while. And I completely forgot about the time aspect too. I remember being so scared every single time that if it's not instant, if it's not instantaneous speed, you're just always worried the entire time. It's like, are my funds even okay? Do they exist anymore? I've been waiting here for like 4 hours,
right?
Or it could be like a whole day even. It could be. I think I used to wait for transaction for like a week if I like, you know, put a low fee.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then Peter Todd is like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I got it covered, you guys. Remember, it's all
we got it replaced by fee.
All replaced by fee." And it's like,
yeah,
and it gets worse. It escalates.
That's just gonna escalate faster. Yeah, it's just gonna accelerate the escalation of prices. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
Hey,
okay.
I have a request. Can we talk about BCH stuff? I'm tired of comedy.
Yeah. Okay. We had a one that maybe we'll save this for next episode and we'll debate it, but it's gonna be a trivia question. Kallisti, community comment of the week, said, true or false, a Bitcoin soft fork can lead to a chain split, not just hard forks. True or false? This is a very finicky question. So you know, I think the answer is false, because by definition a soft fork is only tightening the restricted rules. So I don't think if there was a technical bug in your implementation, or if you socially ended up with a split like we've been talking about, I think you can lead to a split. But as far as I'm aware, there's not a way for a soft fork change to cause a chain split. It can have longer, like in the normal process, you have blocks that get orphaned, and you could perhaps have longer chains that then got orphaned, but it couldn't actually lead to a perpetual chain split, as far as I know. Maybe Uname has the best take on this. I don't know.
Wait. So in terms of a soft fork,
if you put in a soft fork,
yeah.
you end up with a lasting somewhere or another? Can you end up with a lasting chain split that leads to two coins?
Well, that's what was once threatened, but was never put in place. That was the infamous UASF that was all the rage back in 2017. So yeah, a soft fork, for people who didn't catch, is a change in consensus rules that tightens it. Nodes and miners that implements the soft fork would that activates the soft fork would no longer accept things that were acceptable under previous rules. So generally, because of the aggressive nature of soft forks, they are activated with some sort of polling mechanism, or other kinds of mechanisms that make sure or minimize the chance of them generating splits. But you can implement it in such a way that it activates just regardless of what the other guys are doing, and that is where the UASF thing comes from. So if you don't follow what I do, I will just activate it anyway, and then we have two chains. So yeah, in that case, if the majority just gives up and follows, then there is no split. If the majority does not give up and does not follow, then you have some of the nodes, assuming they have a minimal amount of hash power, they would just go off and form their own chain. So yeah.
Okay, but wouldn't that be considered a hard fork at that point, or?
Oh no!
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I adhere to the old school technical definition of soft forks and hard forks.
Okay.
So it would be a chain split. It wouldn't be a hard fork.
Yeah, no, not a hard fork
It
at
would
all.
be a chain split, but not a hard
split.
fork. Got it.
Yeah, it will be a chain split that resulted from some of the nodes adhering to a new soft fork rule.
Okay. All right.
Interesting.
Very,
Cool.
very, yeah, very interesting. All right. So now, as requested, we've got 2 slides here just talking about the ramifications for Bitcoin Cash. So obviously, the BTC narrative is falling apart. 4 megabyte increase is now suddenly a mainstream thing, rather than no, it's 1 megabyte, but we did kind of a bit of alleviation. That's all been rewritten, memory hold, and now it's suddenly no, we always meant to do 4 megabytes. That's the story. Node costs, etc. Pruning nodes is now increasingly part of the BTC discussion. But then you've got obviously cash tokens coming in May. Is this the perfect storm for cash tokens to land in like 2 or 3 months with all the infrastructure and stuff we've already got going, and suddenly it's like ordinals versus cash tokens, NFTs, but ours have low fees and are cooler. Like, how does that play into things?
Unless, I mean, I'm gonna be the bad guy here, but unless some masterful marketeer, influencer, something happens to build up maybe unjustified amount of hype. Nah, I don't think it is, but that's possible also, right? But we're also kind of historically the anti-hype chain, right? And to put it in better terms, we're the utility chain, right? Where we actually take utility seriously, and that's what we're aiming our valuation to be based on, is our utility to people and organizations. And so from that perspective, there's a shit ton of work to be done. to make cash tokens realize its potential, right? Because it's not just, I mean, not to say there's anything wrong per se with JPEG NFTs, but that's not what it is. You can do that, but that's not what it is. To realize the potential of it means retooling, having new indexers, having new libraries to do applications, new ways of, all the standards have to be done, like the ERC20 standard, which is just taken for granted now, right? Didn't exist at one point. It had to be come up with back in the day when Ethereum was still Nerdville, and it was all like world computer, and then it was just a bunch of nerds, and then somebody came up with some standards and somebody figured out how to make money with them, and everything started to take off, right? But we have all that work to do. We have standards to establish and infrastructure to build, so there's still a lot to be done. And as some critics have said on Twitter and other places, you know, like, well, where's all the documentation? And it's like, well, we're still on the ground floor, you know, like the documentation is what you make at this point, because there is no consensus. There is no billionaire who comes in and is like, oh, you know what, I should establish a company. Here's $1 billion to develop infrastructure and documentation and all this shit, and take Ethereum to the next level. That's not really the way it's going with BCH, right? We're developing things ourselves, and it is quite decentralized and bottom up and grassroots. So yeah, it's like, where's all the documentation? It's like, oh, that's a good question. You're assigned to that now, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be done to realize it, but there's always a chance that it turns into hype. I don't know.
So here's another thing that continues from the discussion much earlier is a very significant, or even I would say the majority of the hype surrounding ordinals, it comes from its controversy. Like, if there's no warring camps, like you know, just debating and trying, and some of them trying to stab each other over it, and if it's not such a controversial topic, I mean, seriously, it's some JPEGs. We have seen JPEGs before. Like, this is not anything new, except it's other than the fact that it's on a controversial chain. So, you know, if there's no controversy surrounding it, nobody would give a shit. So, so I would actually be a little bit I would actually be pessimistic about the prospects of something similar, you know, gaining traction, at least in the same way, on BCH through cash tokens, because well, on BCH we are a lot more laid back. If you want to put some JPEG, well, I mean, some people may not like it, but you go ahead, whatever, you know. So it's not going to generate a lot of controversy. So anyone trying to find hype here would have to generate that hype some other, you know, more productive way, and that's not easy. That's not easy.
Let's start up a fight, Jeremy. Like, we'll be like, you're like on one camp, and GP will be
my
in
stream right
camp.
now.
We'll get the fuck off my
stream. Get the clip going, you know, just WWE BCH style.
The actual influencers.
I created an NFT
yeah,
of you. You're
that's how it works.
You know?
I'd like to jump in here. So I love Bitcoin Cash, obviously, right? And I love the idea of NFTs. Right now, I do not care about ordinals, not even a little bit, because it's right now the way NFTs are and how they're perceived in the space is very negatively, because right now we're just seeing them as JPEGs, and that's kind of what they are right now. They're just JPEGs, and to build it out on Bitcoin Cash, you know, the sole cash token ecosystem, it's like the general was saying, it's going to take a lot of work. And part of the reason why it's going to require all this effort and stuff is because right now in the NFT space, in the crypto space, NFTs are just seen as these kind of, they're just pictures. They're not useful for anything. And the way I always perceived them was the way they were meant to be seen, which was they are a way to give a digital asset to somebody, and it is verifiable on the blockchain that it is yours, that you own it. And that is something that I've been into since I was small. I used to say, like, oh, look, I own houses. I own like $100,000 worth of gold. And like, okay, where is it? It's like it's on a video game. right? So it doesn't exist. But and there was no way to verify that it's yours because it didn't exist. It wasn't actually yours. And people would, they would see like, the gold I have in the game, for instance, and they'd be like, "Hey, why don't you spend it on all these cool things?" Like, what do you mean? That's my bank account. That's what I use. That's how I can't spend that money. That's how I'm gonna pay for like, my food tomorrow and stuff. So I was using crypto before it was even crypto, and like, the digital assets I had in these games, that I believe those things to be mine, but there was no way of proving it was mine, and there was no way of proving it had any value. With NFTs, right? That's what we're building right now. It just doesn't seem like that. People have kind of forgot what NFTs were meant to do. Kind of how, sometimes people forget what Bitcoin was meant to do. They forget that, the white paper was meant to be a peer-to-peer currency. The same thing with NFTs. It wasn't meant to be a JPEG and you buy it and you resell it for more money. It wasn't meant to be that. It was supposed to be for the utility of having it verifiable in blockchain, that you own a piece of some virtual asset that's valuable to you. It could be a home. It could be something in the metaverse, like something. It was meant to, that was the whole utility of it. And that's something that it would require a lot of work to build on the BCH chain in the form of cash token and stuff. And that's what I hope to see eventually. But like General says, it's going to take a lot of work to actually build something that, is useful. And yeah,
I remember
that's my take on it.
I remember back in, I think, 2018, James Kramer had it was just a website for a classic arcade style video game, and your save states were SLP tokens. So when you quit the game, you paste your SLP address and it'd give you this token, and then there's no cookie, there's no login, there's no any of that. It's just when you go back to the game, it asks for this token and you put it in, and it's kind of like those old I remember on the Sega Genesis, you'd beat a level and it'd give you a code, and with that code you could get back to the next level, so that it couldn't save anything, but there was a way to get ahead. And I want to see more of that. I think that project was the only one where I've seen that save state idea used. And then kind of building off that, and I mentioned this recently in the new BCH Games Telegram chat, but I have this Minecraft server where everyone in the game gets a Bitcoin Cash wallet, and I would love to have in-game items also be connected with maybe cash tokens. Maybe that'll be the next iteration for me. And so while it might not be transferable to other games, it would be transferable to other Minecraft servers. Like, anyone could just install this plugin and use it all the same, and then they don't need to be in the game to transfer those items around. Like, I really like this idea. I would love to see more being used on it, or used kind of in that method, but I have not seen anything. That being said, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the gaming scene, so maybe I'm just not paying enough attention. But yeah, I'm on board 100%. I'd love to see NFTs used in games. I know it's not like that big of a deal, but it's so much more interesting to me than a picture.
No, I think it is a big deal. It's something that I've been waiting for my entire life. My entire life I've been waiting for this exact thing. So I've known that I've loved NFTs and Bitcoin before I knew that they were a real thing. I've been using crypto before crypto existed. And it wasn't like a small amount of virtual assets I used to have. As a 16-year-old, I had $100,000 worth of virtual assets, in the form of gold, in the form of all these things, and people did not value them. That's the cool thing about NFTs nowadays, is that people now value them. The same things that I used to own back in the day, like I would show people, be like, hey, look at all the stuff I own. It's actually worth like $100,000. Like, no, it's not. What do you mean? There's no marketplace. There's no way to prove that it's worth anything. And also, selling it. There was no, as a 16-year-old, I had to go through PayPal. There was no cryptocurrency. And you can't even use PayPal at 16. So I had to lie and be like, I'm 18. And after they saw that I withdrew like 25 grand, they were like, oh, we just noticed that you've been doing a lot of transactions. We also found out that you're 16. We got to close down your PayPal account. And now I have no means of transacting all these digital assets I had. There was no decentralized way to transfer all these assets and cash out. But with the whole, that's why I love Bitcoin Cash. Bitcoin Cash allows you to do everything with these giant block sizes. You can have these cash tokens, you can have all these digital assets, and then you can have a peer-to-peer currency that works anywhere across the world. It's literally, it's financial freedom. I love the whole concept. It's something that I've dreamt about ever since I was literally a 16-year-old boy, wishing that something would be created that would solve all these issues that I was having. And then Bitcoin Cash came out. I was like, look, this is your solution right here. It's everything you've ever wanted in a currency. It does it all.
So there you go. I think obviously a bit of cold water on, are we suddenly going to get insane hype like Ordinals? No, not really. Of course not. But it kind of cuts back to that same BCH motto, is just sort of the hare and the tortoise, just slow and steady, keep our heads down, keep building, do things sensibly. And over the next few years, those things will start to make huge gains. And I think that can already be taken as a bit of a lesson from this thing. One of the things Stephen Livera said to me when I was arguing with me on Twitter is he was saying, it's time for us to accept that BCH is irrelevant and everybody to switch onto Lightning, right? This is right after he has just posted his opinion, which is the BCH opinion from 5 years ago, right? Things are irrelevant when they're behind the times, not when they're actually ahead of the times, right? And I think we're going to see all the work that has already gone into BCH has been amazing in terms of like cash fusion for fungibility, right? Is a classic example. We had all the stuff that needed to be done kind of around the difficulty adjustment and the addresses and stuff. That was kind of a hassle, but it had to get done. And then you have all the different node teams. You have obviously cash tokens is coming in, the scripting improvements, any hedge, like all these things just build up over time. And we're going to see more and more of the BTC community starting to realize, wait, they're going to start wondering, what if we did have multiple node teams, and how would we organize it? Well, that's they're 5 years behind essentially. And so BCH is cracking on with the next thing in cash tokens. So in 5 years, maybe they'll think, well, maybe we should have something like cash tokens. But by then we'll actually have a whole ecosystem with all the tooling and everything built out, and it will just be an overwhelmingly obvious thing to switch. That's what's happening. More and more people are waking up to these ideas as this is all debated and discussed in the public eye, right? The actual trendsetters themselves are obviously having doubts because, like I said, they're starting to engage with us. But even them, the audience might be listening to them, but they've, at least in my opinion, they've lost a lot of the credibility that they once had. So it just comes down to keeping our heads down and doing things the right and slow way, which is, in the long run, that's how you win a marathon. Basically, you don't just rocket out at the start. You plan for the long game and you execute according to that forward vision. Jett.
Yeah, I just wanted, I saw that General corrected me in the chat here, and I want to say this for our audio listeners. The game was called Load Runner, and it was made by Claudio Gil, not James. I don't think it's still up, and it probably wouldn't work with the disaster of SLP infrastructure nowadays. But maybe something to dig into. Certainly interesting. Sorry for that to bring it back, but yeah, I just really wanted to. I like the corrections.
We also just got to hit on briefly here. Somebody asked in one of the chat groups, could this same Ordinals kind of fee crisis and yada yada, all the stuff involved, could that kick off on BCH? So I just wanted to quickly say that no, it can't, and there's a bunch of reasons. So obviously we don't even have Taproot in the first place, so there's no way to put 4 megabytes of data into one output, at least none that I'm aware of. There's no discounting of the fees to make that cheaper. And obviously the BTC blocks have already been 90% or more full anyway. So just putting it over the top with a few transactions is completely different to regularly filling up the Bitcoin Cash 32 megabyte blocks, which are only, a tiny fraction, not even 10% full. It's actually less. It's more like 1% or less, 0.3%. Actually, maybe in reality, it's like 100 kilobytes out of that 32 bytes. So filling 32 megabyte blocks would be an insane amount of activity and would cost a lot of money to do it or to sustain it. And even if they did, then the community could bump the block size up to 256 megabytes if we actually had that much stuff, or the fee rates could also go from 1 Satoshi a byte to 3 Satoshi a byte. So for the spammer, this is now costing them tons and tons of cash. But for everybody else, it's like it goes from being less than a cent to do your transaction to 1 cent for a couple of days until the spammer runs out of money. So yeah, there's not really any issue, but that's the whole split. That's what it was all about. Like, our system is not vulnerable to this stuff because it follows the original Bitcoin plan for dealing with such things. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that. All right, and then we've got meme of the week. So this is a musical meme of the week. It comes from a guy, Song a Day Man, who has he's a bit of an Ethereum fan. It seems like he's got an NFT JPEG as his picture on Twitter, and he has been writing a song a day apparently for 13 years, and somehow he's involved in all this crypto stuff. So he has made a musical interpretation of a thread between Luke Jr., the core developer, arguing with Brian Micon, who's a longtime Bitcoin OG and sympathetic to Bitcoin Cash, about the ramifications of all this stuff. So yeah, he made a little 2-minute musical song, which we should be able to play here.
Wrong, there is no such thing as change in the protocol in this context. The protocol already doesn't allow data storage. Well, it seems you are mistaken, as recently people have been storing some JPG data in the protocol, Whoa, they are attacking Bitcoin, not using it. No, we can agree they are creating valid Bitcoin transactions, right? We can agree they are creating valid Bitcoin transactions, right? No.
Was great.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah, I did enjoy that. Maybe a bit hard for the audio listeners to follow, that debate. It certainly helps to watch the visual stream and see the tweets coming along as they were discussing it. But
I
that
love how
just
you had
seems to be the next
separate
meme.
like voices for Luke versus the other guy. It's like the dark mood and the light mood.
By lying and tricking code. That's going to be a new meme. I'm sure in a couple of years' time, somebody is going to get a banger tweet off where like they're in an argument with Luke Jr. or with Adam Back or something, and it's the perfect moment to say by lying and tricking code, and that'll just be a huge roast. That's going to be
pretty solid.
One of the memes from this cycle, but yeah, certainly made me laugh. Okay, we got message to the community. So we've got the triple special. Everybody in the guest panel gets a chance to give a message to the community, speak to the Bitcoin Cash community in light of all this ordinals stuff that we've discussed. What do we need to hear? Generally, first up.
Okay, yeah. Just a shout out, I guess, first to all the people who are.
You get a shout out at the end as well. You get a message, and then you also get a quick shout out.
All right. Wait. So okay.
Or we can just combine it. We'll just combine it. To because usually we're wrapping up the show, right? Like because we got to say where to follow you on Twitter and all that stuff as well. So Anyway, let's just make it all a combined thing. Talk about your message to the community, any shout outs, and where people can find out more from you.
All right, yeah, sure. So yeah, mine are kind of the same a bit. I was gonna say a shout out to all the people who are doing their best to be somebody, right? Like trying to step up and do the grassroots thing and actually make something happen, or make their own organization and do something, or do something by themselves. I just really respect I mean, I disagree and argue all the time with all kinds of people, but I respect everybody who's actually stepping up and trying to do something and make something happen. So big shout out to everybody who's doing that in their own way, right? Not only developers, there's marketing, there's developers, there's documenters, there's technical writers, there's people who make websites, there's people who make the history. Hopefully we have some book writers. There's those, it's a whole ecosystem. It has everything that needs to be done. Entrepreneurs is the biggest one, right? So everybody that's trying to make their thing happen, I really respect that and want to just give you a shout out. There's a lot of work to be done with cash tokens and everything else. And something specifically that needs to be done is the development of native Bitcoin Cash wallet. Native, when I say native, I mean it fully understands Bitcoin Cash transactions. That means the smart contract aspect. It means the transaction construction, everything interaction, like constructing transactions between multiple parties so that you can work on a DEX or do all kinds of things. So there's a huge job to be done there. And I don't know who's going to make it happen in the end. General Protocols, we're going to try to make that happen, but it's a huge job and we need people to work with, and we need others to work with us, or if somebody does a better job than us, we'll work with them. But it's a huge mountain that we have to climb, and so I'm looking forward to doing that and having everybody participate in that. If anybody wants to follow us, yeah, Twitter, General Protocol without the S because it doesn't fit in Twitter. And if you have a chance, go try to use app.bch.bull as well and see an example of what you can do with Bitcoin Cash and smart contracts.
Correction, not bch.bull, app.bchbull.com.
Oh, thank you.
Or Google
bchbull.com. That's right.
You'll find it. You name, what's your message to the community and sign off and shout outs?
So I just want to continue what the general said, from a different perspective. Like if you know, a lot of people don't care about all this community drama and the in-depth things about what is being built and stuff, and even for some of the builders, right, they just want to ask, okay, what is BCH going up or down? I want the alpha. I listen to your podcast. I want the alpha. What is going on the next week, to tomorrow, the next hour, or the next month, or something like that. Maybe they're trying to see whether they should hedge or long on BCH Bull. I don't know. But yeah, I would say that the active community, we are not sprawling large enough yet that you don't matter. Like the people listening to this, whether live or after, participate. You are the alpha. So yeah, participate any way you can. Be active. Build. Talk about things, promote, yeah, and be the alpha. That's it.
All right, Dinopwanz.
Right. I mean, I'm just gonna add to what the general imaginary username says. It's just essentially we are all Satoshi. It's I think everybody in the community is doing an incredible job right now. I've been loving BCH Bull as well. I've been using that recently. Really fun protocol to use, and I appreciate everybody in the BCH space who is building on something, working on their own projects, and supporting Bitcoin Cash in their very own way. Even, you know, people who are not developers, like the general said, you can all still help in your own way by posting on Twitter, getting the word out, just talking about BCH and sharing your experiences, and even just using the currency and transacting in it every day. Everyone is doing their part and being a valued member of this community, and I think it's fantastic, and I encourage everyone to continue doing what they're doing, and hopefully, even try to do even more and get the word out there, and be as vocal as possible.
Jett.
So I don't have any message to the community. I have been completely disconnected. It's a running theme now seems to be I'm too busy. So I do have a shout out though. In the last episode, I mentioned that I was looking for someone to help with some Dart development, Flutter Dart development on Zapit, or for Zapit, I should say. And Sayoshi Nakamario reached out, which double shout out, I guess, for the Swagme.cash stuff. And little disclaimer here, we haven't gotten around to it. So any more hands that want to hop on board, just shoot me a message. WW_Tism on Twitter, or JETTSCYTHE on Telegram. Either way, I definitely want to get something going, and the more hands, the better. And then I'm sure Jeremy will also add to this, but also a shout out to Bitcoin Cash TV.
Yeah, absolutely. My shout out is to Bitcoin Cash TV and B-Chad. He hosted the stream at the start, so he brought in some initial viewers, and we're obviously got to get a little community going there of BCH streams and support each other and stuff. So I'll need to look into being able to repay the favor and host people onto his stream if we can sync it up so that he comes on after us in the future as well too. And yeah, my message just kind of comes to we are winning. The narrative is shifting in our favor. So take some heart in that. Like it's not all for nothing. It's not just like bashing our head against a wall. Like the wall is starting to break. You can see the cracks appearing, and all this debate and discussion, the truth emerges slowly. It takes time. It takes discussion for a decentralized message about reality to get out to the whole world. But obviously we don't need the whole world. We just need a good enough chunk of the crypto community. And when you look back at, BTC is not the way. That took a long time coming, but it's mostly out there now. Most people would be aware of that are even vaguely involved. Like there's no question that we live in a multi-coin world. So that's over. And then, hardware scaling is one way to attack scaling. That's now percolating out, boosted by all these people that have switched sides onto our side of the argument, if not our side of the aisle or branding. But that will also come given time, right? So we are winning. I certainly take a lot of heart and motivation, and they're starting to talk back. They have to. We cannot be ignored, and that's becoming increasingly obvious. And I think over the next year or two or three, I can just see an exact moment when Bankless say, like, it's time to redo the block size debate or something like that. If one of them got kind of curious in what was going on in BCH, maybe it won't be that exactly, but some kind of event like that, and suddenly there will be a ton of interest in BCH, and the more work and tooling and hard work we can do in the meantime, the better. So slow and steady wins the race, and we are seeing that. I've been really impressed with a lot of the cash tokens stuff. Of course, it's not going to kick off instantly. It's not going to be a viral ordinal sensation, controversial, etc. But slow and steady wins the race. So that will do it for the show. Thank you, as always, to our patrons, Ricky and HP. The start guide, FAQs, links, and all that are at bitcoincashpodcast.com. Thank you to everybody who donates to the show. It's really appreciated. It's amazing. It certainly helps to keep the lights on. And that will do it for this week. Till next time.
The greatest story the world has ever known. The rise and rise of Bitcoin. 2022.
A single chance for the world, a single moment in time. Bankers captures all, our cryptocurrency flies. Gets to decide, Phoenix fly from the flame. Bitcoin BCH, forever changing the game.
An underdog story everyone trying to deny.